Continuing the essentials of workers' compensation, policies and procedures is what we're covering today. Specifying action in event of a workplace injury. Actions must be very detailed, for example, leave of absence. The consequences of deviating from policy and procedure rules. The importance of documenting disciplinary actions.
The policy and procedure manual is important for every employer to have, and I'm certainly not labor counsel, and I'm not describing anything other than the importance of the policy and procedure manual as it pertains to workers' comp claims. There should be somewhere in the policy and procedure manual of the employer about what happens or what things are affected following a work-related injury. If the employee is off work for any period of time, is there availability of modified or alternate job duty that's offered to the employee? If so, how does that work? What is the leave of absence period if the employee cannot return to work at a modified or alternate job? This is a very important point because there are leave of absence policies for pregnancy, for vacation, for sickness other than workers' comp. All these things are spelled out in the policy and procedure manual. However, most policy and procedure manuals that I have seen are silent when it comes to leave of absence for an employee following a work-related injury. This is, again, a high source of frustration when you have an employer who has an employee who's been off work for, let's say, 2 years. All of a sudden they say, why are we still carrying Jim on our employment rolls? He hasn't been here in 2 years. We don't know if he's ever coming back. Can we terminate him? Well, what does your policy and procedure manual say about that? Don't know. It doesn't. So this is why it's important to address these things ahead of time. What happens for the continuation of coverage for benefits? If Jim is out for 2 years, are his benefits continued, or what happens? Is he terminated off the active role and offered COBRA, or who pays the premiums during his absence? If the employer is paying a portion of the dependent premium, is Jim now responsible for paying 100% of the dependent premium? All these things should be spelled out in the policy and procedure manual so there's an expectation and an understanding of how things will work. And the critical point, as with any rule or procedure or policy a company has, is that they should follow their own policy. I can't tell you how many times I've seen employers deviate from their own policy and procedure for what seemed to be valid reasons at the time, and it usually did not work out the way they had hoped. Either it resulted in a claim of discrimination by others who weren't offered the same kind of treatment, or, in the worst case scenario, it can become the employer's new policy. I had a client who did have an employee who was off work for 2 years. They continued the benefits 100% while the employee was off. It was an indefinite situation. So although the employer in this case did have a policy and procedure that said that they would continue the benefits for a period of 6 months, they deviated from that policy and continued it for 2 years. So in a de facto situation, that the 2 years became their new policy. There's an old adage that says, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And I've been in the claims business and the insurance business a long time, and that adage is never more true than in my industry. But bottom line is, if an employee's actions or attitude demand that an employer discipline them, then they should do it and it should be documented. If it's not done, then the employer will have a lot of difficulty in disciplining an employee for those same actions after a work-related injury, or again face a claim of discrimination under Labor Code 132A. This is, again, I've seen so many employers that an employee comes in late or is habitually absent or something, and the employer doesn't do anything about it. There's nothing in the HR file about this employee. Those same actions continue after a work-related injury, and all of a sudden the employer is up in arms and says, well, Jim keeps coming in late, or he's always absent. I want to fire him. How long has this been going on? Well, it was going on for a long time. Well, that's not what your HR records say. So again, employers should do themselves a favor and document these things as they are happening in real time, and counsel the employee and or take whatever remedial action is dictated in their policy and procedure manual.
Thank you for watching. Please feel free to call either one of us for a free 1-hour consultation on your workers' compensation options.